Healthcare is changing, and Dr. Nancy RN is here for you. The topics are many, but each program stands on its own with 3 key action points for you to learn. Your guide to a healthier you in a changing world. Dr. Nancy RN.
Welcome to Dr. Nancy RN, Healthy World, Healthy Nation, Healthy You. I'm Nancy Valentine, PhD and registered nurse, and this show is dedicated to you, the healthcare consumer. And today our show is going to focus on grief, grieving, and ending distracted driving. Now you may wonder, how are these things associated? But you're going to learn today firsthand from a couple who had to deal with enormous grief and how they have now converted that grief into starting a foundation in memory of their daughter. I'd like to introduce our 2 guests today, Joel Feldman and his wife of 30 years, Diane Anderson. And the picture book that we have here between us is their beautiful daughter, Casey Anderson Feldman, who was lost in July of 2009. And we're going to hear about those circumstances of her loss. We've had in a previous show a discussion about their particular grief as parents and the things that helped them, things that helped you to understand, if you know of a family or a couple that have lost a child, what you can do to really help ease their pain and their grief. So we are building on that show, and the title of our show today is In Her Memory, Creating a Foundation to Remember Casey Anderson Feldman, to raise awareness about the dangers of distracted driving. So please join us, because I think you will find this show very illuminating, because if we really have to fess up and be honest with ourselves, there are very few people that are not driving distracted. And I think at the end of this show, you will be thinking through that behavior more clearly. So thanks for being with us, and let's start with our discussion. And I think for people that have not necessarily heard about Casey from our previous show, Diane, can you just give us an overview of your beautiful daughter?
Yes, Casey was 21 years old when she was killed. It was in the summertime. It was between her junior and senior year at college. Casey was a journalism student at Fordham University, Fordham College Lincoln Center up in New York City. She aspired to be a broadcast journalist. She was brilliant. She had a great sense of humor. She was a loving, caring young woman. She was compassionate, and she lived life to the fullest. She had many friends, and she was really as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside.
Yes, I'm sure we can see that with the pictures. And having gone through this album, you can just see that Casey was bursting with life. Lots of friends, smiling all the time, and very accomplished in many areas. So she had her full life ahead of her when one day she's tragically crossing a street, and she does not, no doubt, see this driver who then runs her down. So I think maybe, Joel, can you tell us the circumstance of Casey's death?
Sure. She was crossing the street. She had a summer job in Ocean City. It was the afternoon, so it was daylight. It was a 4-way intersection. There were stop signs, and she was in a crosswalk. And she had gotten 3/4 of the way across the street when a 58-year-old man driving a commercial van was reaching for something, reaching for his GPS. He rolled through the stop signs, and he literally ran her over.
Yes, that is beyond a tragedy. And in our earlier show, we talked about how difficult it is for a couple such as you have experienced going through such a tremendous loss. And it has taken you a long time, as it would anyone, to really deal with all those different steps in the process of losing someone. But the process that we're talking about today is moving from the acute grief to really taking it to that next level, to doing something in her memory that will really give to society what Casey isn't here to give herself. Would that be a fair assessment of what you feel you've accomplished? So tell us about that part of the journey. How did this actually happen? How did you even move from being devastated to actually taking some action that is beyond just action for yourself or your close family members?
I would say that it got started really not that long after her death. Casey's accident occurred in southern New Jersey at the shore, and the South Jersey Traffic Safety Alliance approached us pretty quickly, wanting us to assist them in their efforts at traffic safety. At the time of Casey's death, the law in New Jersey was that you must yield to a pedestrian in a crosswalk. And there had been efforts initiated to get that law changed to stop for a pedestrian in a crosswalk. And they asked if they could use Casey's name and image in some of their work. And the laws ultimately were changed in New Jersey. Joel lended some assistance, with that, and we were asked to speak throughout the state of New Jersey the day before the law went into effect. So that sort of got us started in our speaking about traffic safety, and then Joel kind of, flew with it from there.
Interesting. So tell us how you flew.
Well, I was learning about distracted driving. Mm-hmm. Casey was killed by a distracted driver, and quite honestly, I had driven distracted all the time. I would text in the car, I would check my emails, I would eat, I would program my GPS, and I'd never been in an accident, and looking back, I was a lucky driver. I wasn't a safe driver. So I did some research. I found out right in our backyard at Children's Hospital, they have great folks there who know about distracted driving, and I said, hey, help me come up with a presentation, because I wanted to go out and I wanted to talk to people, principally teens, but we talk with businesses and professionals all over. But help me come up with a presentation that's science-based. That was very important to me. I could tell a sad story about Casey, but just telling a sad story, if I'm not changing people's attitudes and behaviors, it's almost a waste of time.
Right.
So, go ahead.
So your motivation for doing this was really early on to take what had happened, which was so tragic, and then do something about it. Yeah. Just tell us about that. What motivated you to do that?
I think what motivated me was my daughter was dead. She was an incredible young woman, and she hadn't gotten a chance to find a career, marry, have children, and would she be forgotten? Would her life make a difference? So I thought that's something that I needed to do in her memory.
Right. So it was really, again, I think a beautiful illustration of how you lose something that's so precious. Nothing is more precious than losing a child under any set of circumstances. But this, where it happened in a blink of an eye, literally within a microsecond, this young woman's life was erased. And I think her parents really felt the compelling desire to do something that would keep her life alive in a different form. And they have been very successful in doing this. And that's what we're talking about today, is to really go through that journey step by step with them, because there are lessons learned for people that have had other losses that are similar. But there's also a lesson in how you can live and do something that is really a beautiful thing in memory of someone that was very dear to you. So you went from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, a renowned organization, to using their scientists, the people that were doing research in this area, to putting that first presentation together. So how did it go? Where was it, and what happened?
Well, at the beginning, I was asked by other people to sit in, and that's where I kind of said, why do they do things like this? And as I said, I tell my sad story. So I'd done a couple and I wasn't satisfied. That's why I went to Children's Hospital. So one of the first presentations I gave was up in Bucks County at the Ben Salem High School, and I think it went really well. It was designed to engage teens. Others are designed to engage adults, but this was designed to engage teens, and we got tons of feedback. And I'm fortunate. It might sound strange to say a father who lost his daughter is fortunate, but I consider myself one of the most fortunate people in the world. I get to remember Casey in a special way, and I can tell you now that I'm as professionally and personally fulfilled as I've ever been in my life. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to say those words because my daughter was dead. But it's okay. She's dead. I can't change that, but I can
Right.
do something positive.
Right.
So it's gone very well. I've talked to personally 25,000 teens in 20 states in the last year, people that I train around the country to give the presentation. We've collectively talked to about 150,000 teens in 42 states and some provinces of Canada. So it's really taking off, and we're really excited about it.
That is a remarkable outcome. Now, what I want to ask, I have a lot of questions I want to ask the two of you, but when you said we designed it to engage teens, everybody wants to know how to engage teens. So what was the secret sauce for that?
I get up and I look at the teens, and the first thing is I say, I never liked it when people told me what to do, including my wife, so I'm not going to tell you what to do. We're going to just talk about distracted driving, and it's not just a teen problem. I know that your parents are driving distracted. You know it as well. It's everybody's problem, and we need everybody to solve it. So, I'm a lawyer, and this is my jury, and if I don't connect with them in 30 or 45 seconds, I don't have them. And I connect when it's a different presentation when someone says they're not going to tell them what to do.
That's an attention getter right there. So that's a very good opening, and I'm sure that a lot of people watching this show could use that line on a lot of different topics. We're not going to preach to you, we're going to have a conversation, and we want you to at least listen to that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I might also add that it's not that Joel or I get up and we give some speech and we're just talking the entire time and showing a PowerPoint or videos, etc. The teens are actually engaged through questioning, and I know at the very beginning one of the ways Joel engages the teens is we've had wristbands made for End Distracted Driving and for the Feldman Foundation, and he'll ask a question, a teen will raise their hand and answer, and they're thrown a wristband, and before you know it, all the teens are raising their hands every time there's a question because they want to get a wristband.
Yes. Oh, that's nice. The value of positive reinforcement,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Oh, that is beautiful. So you have organized this presentation that you've given that many times and have really touched that many lives. But I know that you used this and then you made a video. How did that happen? How did you go from making these presentations to actually producing a video?
The U.S. Department of Transportation has a website, Faces of Distracted Driving. The concept is we can talk about statistics, but
Okay.
let's tell stories of real people and how it's changed them so people will think about changing their attitudes and behaviors. I saw that. I wanted Casey's story on it. I called them and I said, would you film us and do it? And they said, well, we're sorry, and this was a couple of years ago, we already have everything filmed through the middle of 2014. And so I've done a number of films in connection with my law practice. So I said, well, if we do it, will you look at it? And they said, well, no promises, but we will look at it. And we're going to play it shortly. But it was accepted, and it's the first and the only one on their site that was submitted by a member of the public. And this video is at the part of the presentation where we've talked about distracted driving. We've talked about what they do, what their parents do, their friends do. We've talked about the dangers, the consequences, and we're now pulling it together, saying, hey, we're all in this together. All of us have driven distracted, but we can all change, we can all make a difference. So this pulls it in together, and it leads into solutions and how we're empowered to go forward and change the way we drive.
That is really fantastic that you were able to do that on your own, that you didn't wait for the bureaucracy to catch up with you. You just went right out and did it.
Well, I mean, a large part, I don't know if you'd call it ego or not, but other families were telling or having their loved one's story told, and Casey's wasn't. So that was really important to me to tell her story.
Right. So you really wanted to have that competitive edge.
You got it.
Nothing wrong with that. Look what it produced. When I first met Joel Feldman on the phone, he was referred to me by a colleague at Villanova University. He sent me this tape. It's a 3-minute tape that I think is really worthy of your attention because when I watched it, I never heard of the Feldman and Diane Anderson, his wife. I never met Casey, but once I saw this, I knew we had to really have this show really for you to look at. So let's take a moment and watch this.
This is a face of distracted driving. This is Casey Feldman. Casey was a daughter, granddaughter, sister, niece, cousin, and friend. She was kind, caring, had a great sense of humor, lived life to its fullest, and was loved by many.
She was so funny and so vibrant and so beautiful in every way.
She was smart, she was intelligent, she had goals for herself, she was really grounded, and she was someone that you knew would grow up to be somebody special, somebody important to other people.
Casey's life ended on July 17, 2009. She was struck and killed by a distracted driver while she was crossing the street in a crosswalk. He had taken his eyes off the road for just a few seconds.
It was the first time that I ever lost somebody, a friend, and someone my age, and it made me realize that could have easily have been me, that could have been my sister, it could have been anybody.
Before Casey's accident, I drove distracted, and I would let people who were driving me be distracted.
I know in high school, rushing around to activities, I'd be eating in the car and doing makeup in the car. I actually wrote a speech in the car once.
I was changing the radio station while backing out of a parking spot, and I hit a utility pole.
I would take my eyes off the road to do makeup, to text message, to use my phone.
I think definitely as a teenager, when you're first driving, you do feel invincible, and driving can become a secondary task to whatever you're doing.
You're basically operating a weapon, and I think that people need to realize that they're operating something that has the power to change 1,000 lives.
No matter what it is you're trying to do in the car, it's not worth it.
When you're driving, it's not a secondary task, it is the only task you should be doing.
We must learn from Casey's death that as young people, we are not invincible.
And we learned that it just doesn't happen to other people. It happened to Casey, someone that we love and miss very much.
I think of Casey lying on the roadway after her accident, and when the police officer asked her how it occurred, she said, "I want my mom," and I wasn't there to comfort her in those last moments. What will it take for us to change the way we drive?
I've stopped having meals in the car.
I put one CD in and I just don't change it.
I make sure my purse is in the back seat now, my phone is in the back seat.
If I'm driving, that's the only thing I'm doing.
This is the picture I have in my car of Casey to remind me to keep my eyes and mind on the road. You could do the same with a picture of somebody that you love and care about.
That was really a very beautiful tape. Very, very beautiful. I think when I watch this tape, there are many aspects to it that really can hit any viewer. But the thing that I really felt was very compelling was the idea of having a picture of someone that you really love, that you have in your vehicle, that you really keep this picture as really sort of like an iconic reminder that there are other people other than yourself that you really want to be around for, and you don't want to make any false moves, which is easy to do when any of us are doing distracted driving. And that, I think, is a beautiful legacy. I mean, again, with all the other things that you're doing, somehow that was a great takeaway. It was almost like getting that bracelet, if you happen to be in the audience. You can create your own reminder that this is something that is really precious to you. So I really think you've done a great job on that. What kind of feedback have you gotten on this film?
Oh, we've gotten tremendous feedback, and that's one of the things why I say I'm so fortunate, because people will look at it and people will say, gosh, these are young people who have changed the way they drive because their friend was killed. And for all of us, there's this thinking that it's never going to happen to us. You know, we're here and the film shows that it can happen to us. It can happen to each and every one of us. So it's the young people changing the way they drive. I think that resonates with young people saying, maybe we should change the way we drive. How grief-stricken would we be if someone that we love died? Right. But it's also the parents who look at it. I mean, listening to my wife and, you know, how courageous she was talking in there about Casey's last words and feeling that she should have been there for Casey as she was dying. That, as you know, connects with parents as well.
Right. Was it hard for you to make this film, Diane?
Yes, definitely. But, you know, again, I had the same feeling as Joel that we want Casey to be remembered. We don't want her to be forgotten. We want her life to have made a difference. So, you know, all that is swirling around in my head as, you know, I consented to doing this and as I was being filmed.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You really, really deserve a lot of praise, both of you, for doing this. It's really a beautiful thing, and it is helping other people. Let's go back to when you're with the high school students. I'd be interested, and I know our viewers would like to hear, what kind of responses do you get?
Okay, so again, trying to connect with the teens, I don't come at them, tell me about your texting, tell me about what you're doing. We talk about me. I admit I was a distracted driver, and I say, I drove distracted with my kids in the car. And I asked them, if I asked your parents who the most important people were in the world, what would your parents say? And all their hands go up and they say, well, it's us. We, the kids, are the most important. And then I say, well, how do we as parents take chances driving with those who are the most important people in the world to us? So we talk about that. They come and they say, well, my mom puts her contact lenses on when she drives. My dad has a Coke in one hand, a hamburger in the other, jamming out to music, steering with his knees. My mom is a realtor. She'll have me steer for her as she checks her emails. You can't believe what you hear, and texting and everything else. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, we talk about it, and I say to the kids, you know, you want to be independent. Getting a driver's license is a mark of independence. Exercise that independence. You don't have to drive like your mom and dad, and you can change the way they drive, and you can be a good role model for your younger brothers and sisters.
Right. And do you know about the so-called outcomes? Do you know if they really have changed their behavior? If there's any way of really validating that?
Yeah, well, as I said, science was really important to us. So along with coming up with the presentation, Children's Hospital came up with pre- and post-presentation surveys.
Oh, good. Tell us about that.
Well, they're going to be coming out with a white paper shortly over the next couple of months.
Now tell people what a white paper is, because the average person has never heard of a white paper.
Okay. So what it is instead of a long, detailed research paper, this is a synopsis, so to speak, of research. So it's going to be coming out, it's science-backed, the researchers are behind it, and it's going to analyze one portion of it, and we're having a statistically significant difference in having kids think that it's important to talk about distracted driving with not only their peers, but with mom and dad, and also we do some things, exercises, to give them the confidence to do so, because you can't just tell them about distracted driving and say, hey, you know, you shouldn't do it. More often than not, they're being driven distracted by friends and mom and dad, and for many of you out there, if your children are being carpooled, guess what? Your friends, adults, are driving your children distracted. You probably didn't think about it, but they are. So we give them the tools so they can speak up in a non-confrontational fashion and start to make a difference. And, you know, we're getting really good feedback and good results.
So you...
I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead,
and
Diane.
I was just going to say, I think that you were asking, too, what has been the reaction, I guess, of some of the students. And I think you have some of that up on the website, you know, quotes from students who have seen the presentation and what they've said about it and how they've changed. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we do have a section about that, and it's like, you know, my mom left her cell phone at home this morning. My dad said, hey, let's pull over for me to eat. I don't have to eat in the car, you know, that kind of thing. So we're getting practical examples of it.
That's good. And just remind us again about your website address.
It's endd.org, enddistracteddriving.org.
Very good. And I think that you've also developed a tool, like a pledge for people to take. Is that correct?
Yeah, we have. It's a family safe driving agreement, and it's all phrased positively. It doesn't say, I won't, I can't, I will not, or don't. It says, I can.
Right.
So it's uplifting, and it tells people what we can do, and this is it. It talks about different steps, you know, arranging to have someone be a designated texter, to have someone put you answer the cell phone for someone. It also talks about sharing the responsibility as a passenger with the driver. for arriving safely.
Right.
Don't just let it be the driver. Offer solutions.
Right.
Help the driver.
Right. So I think it's very important that everything is put in a very positive light so that it is not being punitive, because as you said, people don't want to hear punitive messages. They want to hear positive messages.
And I think for that reason, we actually don't call it a pledge.
You don't.
That's why we call it the Family Safe Driving Agreement.
I see.
So you are not pledging not to do something. You're having an agreement that, yes, I can drive without using my cell phone. I can drive without texting.
Very good.
I can drive without eating.
That's great. So you really thought this through very, very carefully. I think that the other piece that I hear is that you have succeeded in your goal of remembering Casey. Every time you give one of these presentations, it must be in her honor, in her memory.
It is, and yesterday I got an email with a photograph from a lawyer in New York City, and he showed me on the wall of his office, he has all the things from his kids. They're between the ages of 8 and 10, and right in the middle of it he's got a picture of Casey. He's one of perhaps 400 lawyers and 150 healthcare professionals across the country who are giving talks. So I know today that Casey will not be forgotten because of what we're doing in her memory, and it's very, very, very special for us.
That's beautiful, Joel, really, and Diane as well. As a partnership, you've really, really made a tremendous difference in other people's lives in ways that you'll never necessarily know or see, but obviously they have. We're going to watch another public announcement segment that they've done with the Department of Transportation. We're just going to take a moment and take a look at this because, as you can see, the message is children watch their parents, and if you want to make a difference, you need to take a look at your own behavior first. So let's take a moment and look at this.
Teens whose parents drive distracted are twice as likely to also drive distracted. Our children look up to us. They pick up our habits, good and bad. What behaviors are you teaching your children? What distractions would you give up if it meant saving your child's life?
That, I think, is a great message because it was really spearheaded by the work that Joel Feldman and his wife Diane Anderson have done together jointly. In this show, we've talked about some very key points. In this case, it did take losing a daughter for people, in this case, the Feldman and Andersons, to change their behavior. They wanted to do something very positive in the memory of their daughter, and they have achieved that. There is safe driving, and as Joel said, there is lucky driving, which I think is really, if we fess up, most of us are probably lucky. And before Casey was killed, lucky driving seemed to be okay, but afterwards it was a whole different story, and that is the message. Education is key, and that is really what Joel and Diane are doing. They're really getting out there and educating people so that it really is a shared responsibility among family and friends with friends, as we've already heard. That is what really makes a difference. And as Joel said in preparation for this, there were many years ago when drunk driving was something that we were just getting a handle on, and now we have a lot of specific program initiatives that really have helped to trim down drunk driving and make it socially unacceptable. This is the same phenomena that is now coming to our attention through distracted driving. There are all kinds of different distractions, and you've heard some very vivid examples of that. I think that this show has really made me more sensitive to this area, and I hope that it has done the same for you. Again, I want to thank Diane and Joel for the tremendous effort that you've given to the world through your efforts. And Casey is right here in the middle, and we want to certainly, our hats off to her, because her joie de vivre, her love of life, is what really continues to inspire many. When you go onto their website, you will see beautiful illustrations of this. Thank you both again for being with us, and thank you for joining us for this compelling discussion. Have a wonderful day. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today and that the information will help you in meeting your health goals. Catch this program and other conversations on the website, drnancyrn.com. Or you can write to me as well. I welcome your comments and feedback. Thank you for listening, and join us again. And remember, with health, all things are possible.